Hello again, folks. It is all but certain. Prime Minister Scott Morrison says Australia will commit to net zero emissions by 2050. But the process by which he has arrived at this policy has been gradual, to say the least. Who can forget him as Treasurer, bringing a lump of coal into Parliament and taunting the anti-coal mining Labor Party in 2017?
Thank you, Mr Speaker. This is coal. Don't be afraid. Don't be
Treasurer,
scared.
The Treasurer knows the rule on crops.
It's coal. It was dug up by men and women who work and live in the electorates of those who sit opposite.
But in February this year, he started to embrace the global movement to reduce emissions, outlining his plan to revive the economy after COVID-19. He said at the National Press Club.
But our economic recovery plan, I should stress, is underpinned by something incredibly important, and that is delivering affordable and reliable energy in a way that positions Australia to be successful in the lower and ultimately net zero emissions global economy of the future. Our goal is to reach net zero emissions as soon as possible, and preferably by 2050.
By last Friday, that had evolved even further into...
Challenge is not about the if and the when, the challenge is about the how.
While this might bring Morrison into line with the world leaders he'll be meeting at the COP26 conference in Glasgow in 2 weeks, you have to wonder if he has arrived at this for other reasons than the climate. He might be taking a tentative 2050 net zero commitment to Glasgow, but he won't be taking an improved 2030 target. As things stand, Australia is locked into a 26 to 28% reduction of 2005 levels by 2030, which we'll comfortably beat anyway. But Australia is a long way short of what the US is aiming for right now, with Joe Biden promising to cut emissions by a whopping 50 to 52% from 2005 levels by 2030. That's even higher than what then opposition leader Bill Shorten tried to win an election on back in 2019. After China, the US is the world's second highest emitter of greenhouse gases, so the pressure is on to do something. But the president's climate agenda is hanging by a thread and at risk of collapse in the US Congress. Now that would be interesting, given the high-powered American delegation heading to Scotland. Biden's got the same issues Australia does. Voters worried about their jobs in the world's rapid push to renewables. Now, the two nations are somewhat linked in this because of the AUKUS alliance, otherwise known as the Forever Partnership, which also includes the United Kingdom, of course. It may be the key to Morrison's shift when he declared this week that there were economic and security imperatives in transitioning to a carbon-neutral future. That, plus an apparent lack of detail and costs, is why the National Party is so nervous about backing up its senior coalition partner.
We just haven't been given the detail here about how this is going to work. There is no credible plan to get to net zero emissions by 2050. We cannot go to an election, or should not tell people fantasies about hydrogen coming from nowhere and saving the day. These are real choices we've got to make. We should not be gambling people's jobs on unproven technologies.
Whether the Nationals come on board and officially support net zero doesn't matter. The Liberal Party can go it alone, at least for now. But there is an answer here, and one huge carrot for the Nats that will help us considerably get to net zero by 2050. Nuclear. We've already got nuclear subs coming. Why not establish an industry, which many say we're going to need anyway to properly maintain the subs? Here was the Nationals leader Barnaby Joyce on it.
I think this nation's getting closer, but it requires the Labor Party to be brave enough and statesman enough to say, if you want baseline reliable power, then nuclear has to be in the mix. Now, whether you pick it or not, it is the problem at the moment, because you can't even make a decision that way because of legislative restrictions. And now that is up to the Labor Party if they want to show that they have the capacity to be statesman enough to say, well, we'll do this in a bipartisan way because it's a good outcome for the nation. But they choose not to do that, so it's stuck in the mud and going nowhere.
As the Australian's James Kirby pointed out this week, many nations around the world are returning to nuclear's warm embrace. Japan's new Prime Minister has repositioned the government and suggested it's crucial we restart our nuclear plants. In the UK, Boris Johnson's government is expected to jointly fund 16 new mini reactors. In France, President Macron announced a $1 billion plan to build its first mini reactor. In Germany, because it is in danger of missing 2022 climate targets, leading public figures have launched a campaign to reverse a plan to close all of its nuclear power stations. Here in Australia, we have the world's largest resources of low-cost uranium. We export 10,000 tonnes of the stuff every year. Just saying. Folks, if you want to support these videos, please like, share and subscribe below. I'll see you next week.